Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. I'm your host, Jill Hart, and with us today is Laura Richards. Laura is an international podcaster, #1 bestselling author, and the speaker dedicated to empowering women through her podcast, That's Where I'm At, and her bestselling book, Married to a Nice Guy, Getting Over Narcissistic Abuse. Laura shares her personal journey of recovery from a 32-year marriage to a narcissist. Welcome to the show, Laura. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us your story.
Okay. Where should we start? Well, I'll kind of start at the end and then work my way back. Is that I didn't know that he was a narcissist because there's something that happens when you leave abuse and you start getting clarity and things start coming to you and you kind of start unraveling, your brain starts unraveling all the pieces. I really thought I was getting a divorce for irreconcilable differences. I thought my husband was just difficult and that if I could just explain myself better, he would understand, which is what I was told, right? All through our marriage, which is something that's sort of what you're told and gaslit and manipulated into believing that you're just so hard to understand and you're so demanding and all these things. And it was like, I didn't think I was because I felt like when I went in the world, people understood me. And so when we got divorced, it was such a surprise to me because I was healing. I was just doing my little healing. I always say it like that because I feel like I was having a cup of tea and then I found out I had cancer. It was like that. That's what I felt like. Because soon after I started to find out what he was doing behind the scenes, he had, had this quote unquote new girlfriend who had always been there. He promised me she was just a friend, etc. And that's when I started to unravel. I'm like, oh, I put the pieces together. I started looking things up and I was like, oh, he's a narcissist. And the good thing about that is now I had a name for my pain because, as humans, we really want to be seen and heard. And when we're just in pain and we're just to be sitting there in our pain, it's hard. So when I started to understand, like, he was already with somebody new, and what did that mean? Did that mean I was garbage? Because that's how I was being treated? No, that doesn't mean I'm garbage. It means they're garbage. And that's how they treat people. They just throw them away. It doesn't matter. Let me get on to the next one to fill that need. And so when I had a name for my pain, it really helped me to be able to heal. And the podcast was not anything that I ever thought I would be doing or writing a book about my story. But as I started to heal, I wanted to tell people, I did some petty videos on social media. Let's be real. Okay. So that's what I did. Look, I'm okay with it. I still post some of them. I don't care because it's just when you've had the narrative I felt like all my life that I wasn't really allowed to be myself and say what I wanted to say, or if I did, people criticize me for it. So when I started to control the narrative for myself, people were like, oh, I had a couple of people that were like, oh, you shouldn't be talking about that. And then I had other people who were like, did you know I was in an abusive marriage? Did you know my first marriage, ended this way? And I'm just like, well, no, because we don't talk about that. And I didn't understand, why aren't we talking about this? And why are people telling me not to talk about it? And I had such a deep need to be heard and seen, again, going back to that human need. And so eventually I went from being petty on social media to making it a business of being petty. No, just kidding.
Love it.
I mean, that's what people think sometimes, but I really just bring awareness so that people don't end up in 32 years like like I was. So that's the
It's
summary, but we can talk more about it.
yeah, it's amazing to me how prevalent that that mindset was. And I say was because even though it does still exist now,
Uh-huh.
the idea about narcissism and the pain that's caused
Yeah.
because of the gaslighting,
Yeah.
you don't realize that you're okay. It's really everything around you,
Yeah.
especially if you were raised by parents that were had maybe narcissistic
Mhm.
tendencies
Right.
or devalued you as a human being. You,
Mhm.
you kind of think that that is the normal state. And
Right.
then when you find out there's a there's an old joke, and I'm gonna tell it, but it may not come out that well. And
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the name of the guy that to give credit to him. He's a comedian from a really long time ago. He's like, my parents used to tell me never go through the cellar door. And I listened to them for the longest time. But then one day I decided to open the cellar door and I was amazed. I saw grass and trees and sunshine. And that's what I felt like when I
Yeah.
realized that it wasn't me, it
Yeah.
was them. There is a
Right.
whole nother world outside once you recognize that you're sitting in
Right.
the cellar.
Seriously. And the hard part is that when you go through a quote unquote normal divorce, people want you to, take accountability and think about what did you bring to the marriage? What did you do? And I had a hard time sitting in a divorce group listening to people tell me what did you do wrong sort of thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do wrong to be abused? And so unpacking that, I've learned there's two different ways to get divorced, right? You're getting divorced from abuse, or you're getting divorced in quote unquote a normal way, where you maybe people are just respectful and they break up and they go about their life, irreconcilable differences, which is what I had. And so that's hard because we don't blame for abuse. But we do want to do some introspection and say, like, why do I keep showing up to the circus? And why do I keep choosing the clowns? And why do the clowns keep choosing me? So there's not that blame area there. It's really what's lacking in me because it was that need, that deep need for me to be loved a certain way. He swept me off my feet. Societally, we've been trained that way. We've been trained wrong to be swept off our feet and oh my gosh, falling in love at first sight and all that. Oh my gosh, that's just a recipe for disaster. I can't hardly watch any rom-coms or I was watching Sex in the City and I was like, "Oh my God, there's so many red flags."
Just the whole, two halves make a whole thing. No,
Yes.
you have
No.
to be whole yourself. You
Yes.
be a human being, you love yourself, and somebody
Yes.
will come along if they're
Yes.
supposed to, because, not everybody is supposed to have a
Yes.
partner.
Well, and I always thought that that was sort of a failure thing, right? That you're supposed to have a partner. But the thing that I have learned is that you are the love of your life. And you have to understand that because I have such a love for myself. I know boundaries, and you can't set boundaries unless you love yourself because then you don't even think you're worthy to set a boundary or give anybody a boundary if you don't love yourself. I know my worth, I know my value. And so I can walk in this world and not just let people dump on me. They may dump on me, but it doesn't affect me. I can brush it off and understand, okay, I don't need to have communication with that person all the time. I don't need to have that person in my life. That person might not be in my inner circle anymore. I might have to put them out in a little bit further because they're not respecting me. And that's a hard thing when you start to heal because you do change. I'm a completely different person than I was just a little over 2 years ago. I think about really for now it's been 5 years. When my mom passed away, actually 5 years ago today, when my mom passed away, it was the beginning of the end of our marriage because they have such a lack, narcissists have such a lack of empathy that he didn't understand like what was the big, not what was the big deal, but how long was I going to be sad? They don't know what to do with that. Um, and it's like, okay, well, go stick it where the sun don't shine because that's not okay to, it's like you are allowed to be sad for the rest of your life about your mom passing away. And so that was hard. And so I feel like I'm a completely different person since, and because of that and all the healing I've been doing, there's a lot of people who aren't in my life that were in my life before because they don't understand how I am now. I didn't have to set boundaries with them. They just don't want to be around that for whatever reason. There's lots of reasons why people don't do that.
And it's okay.
Hmm.
You know, it sometimes it's a good thing. And it doesn't even mean that there's anything wrong with them or that they're bad people. They're just
Hmm.
not the people that you need
Yeah.
in your life now.
Right.
And your relationships do change
Yeah.
when you anytime you get divorced. I divorced someone who had a lot of problems,
Hmm.
and they generally come because their parents had lots of problems. And
Right.
it's like, I think we talked about that
Hmm. We may have talked about
before,
that. Yeah.
that it's usually the mother-son relationship is
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
um yeah.
And they don't seem to see it that way. And of course, like what for my age, my parents were born in 39 and 41. There weren't people going to therapy. And then I think about that with my ex as well. His parents were born in the 30s and they have major trauma as well. There's trauma in my family, there's major trauma in their family. They didn't deal with it. They just left the situation. You know, and so what happens with that is you become emotionally unavailable. You can if you don't deal with it. And so with a mother-son relationship, that's how it kind of breeds. I always say breeds because that's how I look at it. It breeds the narcissist. The mom is the queen, and then she had some little ones. And I see it. It just kind of, it's just all in the family. When you look at it from the outside, when I went into their family, I was like, oh, it's like Norman Rockwell. They're all sitting around the piano singing songs. And then after a while, I was like, oh boy. I saw behind the curtain. I was like, okay, this is
Have the
scary over
invisible
here.
strings that are chaining them to the piano and forcing them to smile. And
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
it really is, it's like that. It's like
Yeah.
they have to create this, they have to perform in order to get affection.
Oh yeah, you have to follow the rules. And that's also then what happened with me and my ex is that I stopped following the rules. I started to stand up for myself and I actually people always say like what happens when you like call them out when I'm in these narcissist groups? What if you call them out and tell them they're gaslighting you or tell them this? I go, "Oh, well that starts the devalue stage." And that's what happened to me. I heard the word gaslighting and I didn't really even know what it meant. I just knew that he was trying to trick me into thinking that I didn't know something when he had said it, all these things. And that's all I really knew. And I said to him, I said, I think you're gaslighting me. And then he gaslit me into, what are you even talking about? I would never do that. I've never done that. I was like, did he just gaslight me? He did. And so I really blew it off. But what that did was start the clock on the devaluing. And so for the last 2 years of our marriage, he really ramped it up to the point where I needed to leave. And so that's what he wanted because that's the reverse discard where they force your hand to want to leave. He's already been telling everybody he's in a terrible marriage. Laura's giving up on the marriage. And that really was hard because I knew I had spent so many years in therapy and sitting in Bible studies and reading every marriage book to be the best wife I could be. And I threw all those books away when I got divorced because I was like, it wasn't me. Like we talked about, look, I have my own responsibility, but I walked out of my 32-year marriage knowing I did everything I could and I was faithful and I had integrity And so I'm not going to feel bad about that at all. But it was a pleasure to take all those books and throw them in the trash and go, every single
Well,
line. I felt so sad for that person. God save my marriage. God save my marriage. That's all I ever said. And it's like, I didn't know I was dealing with a narcissist who didn't want to save our marriage. He just wanted me to follow the rules and be a shell of a person. Congratulations. That's what I did. And then I eventually left because I couldn't do it anymore.
yeah, you can only put up with it so long before you realize that you need to be who you're here to be. And
Right. So who
it's
do
okay.
you want to be? And maybe when you're in it, you can't even think that because I couldn't. But the question I asked myself was, can I live like this for the rest of my life? Because if he never changes, because we can never control anybody else, right? And so if I can only control myself and I'm in therapy or I'm reading books or I'm trying to be the best me I can be, and he's around me, beating me down. So I had to say to myself, am I going to live like this for the rest of my life? And I finally had said in therapy, I can't do it anymore. And she said, well, you've been clear with him. He's either unwilling or unable. And she said that every time. He's either unwilling or unable. Which do you think it is? And I'm like, unwilling. And every month we would talk about it. Unwilling or unable. Until one day
And
I
it
was
doesn't
like,
really matter. I-
right.
because even if he's unable, that
Yes.
just means that it's not going to change. If he's unwilling,
Right.
it's still not going to change. So
Right.
it's up to you. Do you want this, or are
Yeah.
you willing and courageous enough to say,
Yeah.
no, there's got to be, I'm going to open that cellar door. Yeah,
Right. And see the grass on the other side.
see
And that's
that's
the thing. It's hard when I think back because I was so brainwashed, I was so gaslit and manipulated, I was so broken as a person that thinking back, I was actually very proud of myself for saying I wanted a divorce because I never thought that's also another part of society too, and the culture I was in. Everybody's married forever. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, you may be married forever, but are you happy? Because some of you don't look happy. And what's the point of that? At the end of our life, there's nothing that ever happens that you don't get a certificate or something. Though I was listening to somebody on Instagram or something. They're like, oh, they make everybody stand up in church or whatever it is, who's been married the longest? It's like, who cares?
I've
Because
gotten
it's
to the
it's a
point I don't even care if my kids are
right.
married or not. I'm
Yes,
not sure I
exactly.
would get married again at this point in my life.
That's how
It's
I feel. And it's sort of sad to me because I love love, but I'm not opposed to love and a big giant diamond ring. I just kind of want that. And, and maybe a commitment ceremony, but no marriage.
right.
Hey all, I'm Jill Hart. We all know that legal matters can be costly and stressful. Finding the right representation and dealing with high retainers and hourly bills adds up fast. But what if I told you there was a way to have legal insurance, just like your health or auto insurance? Well, Legal Shield has leveled that playing field. From just $29.95 a month, you get access to lawyers for personal legal matters, from traffic tickets to real estate issues or even trust matters. Help is just a tap away on your phone. Call or text 435-764-0875 and use the code JillLegal or start your journey to legal protection today.
You know, I have a set of kids that they they're engaged.
Uh-huh.
They have two kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care. I
Right.
love them both.
Yeah.
They may or may not ever get married, and I
Right.
really don't care.
It's a different time and it's just like we don't have to throw everything out, but it's a different time and it's like we don't need to check those boxes. We don't need to worry about these. What are you doing now? What's next? All those things. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such pressure. I just encourage my kids with what they're doing. I'm like, are you happy? Are you paying your bills? It's like, are you able to do the things you want to do? That's all you need to worry about right now. Are you a good human being? Are you fighting for the things that matter to you in this world? Then that's what we need to worry about. And all of my kids and my son-in-law, they're great people. And so I just don't worry about it. And now I have a granddaughter, so I'll be encouraging her. She's too little right now. She doesn't understand when I tell her anything.
But they feel it, and they feel relationships, and
Yes.
they get stuff. One of my
Yeah.
grandsons calls my husband grandma. I'm Nana
Oh,
and he's grandma.
oh, how cute. That's
I'm
so
gonna get him
funny.
a shirt that says the world's best grandma.
That's so cute. I know it's so funny. We always tried to give certain names to my parents, and then as they heard us talking to them as parents, it's like the grandparent names kind of changed. It was just really cute.
Yeah. Grandkids are like the best.
Mhm. I'm learning that.
So when it comes to just standing up for yourself,
Yeah.
what advice do you give women?
Well, I just always believe in working on your worth and value because that really will give you some clarity. Now, along with that is boundaries, but you have to have you have to know your worth and value first. So really be thinking about you. What do you want from this world? But who are you? What do you think of yourself? What are the voices in your head when you stand in front of the mirror? That's a really great exercise, is doing some mirror work. Some people won't even look at themselves in the mirror, but to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you're great, you're doing a good job, I love you, you look beautiful, all those things. But thinking about those words that come into your head, that are they from you? Or are they from someone else? Say, let's just say like your mother, who told you, you're not pretty enough, or you're too fat, or whatever it is. And so thinking about those and really removing those things, grabbing those thoughts and really changing them, because our brain is really locking these thoughts into place, but we don't need to believe them. Somebody gave them to us. A lot of times it wasn't us who gave us these thoughts. And so let's put those new thoughts in there, because then you can start loving yourself just as you are. Does not matter to me 1 second what anyone says. You have a wrinkle, you have a this, you have a that. I like to put on makeup because I like to. I'm not trying to cover anything. I'm not trying to do anything. And that's taking a lot of work. But it's little simple things to love yourself, because then you can start setting healthy boundaries. And that's when you're going to really start living the life that you really want to live.
I'm making time for yourself and
Oh, yeah.
knowing they are special. And
Yes. I mean, it's like, get a hobby. What have you like doing? My target audience really is, 45 to 65. And so it's like, say your kids are grown or pretty well self-sufficient, that you don't have to be watching them. Well, so what are some things that you want to do? Can you go for a walk? Can you pick up tennis again? Can you go paint? We forget about ourselves, and then we're not good for anybody. And then you'll feel like you're so sad, you're so depressed, and you wonder, well, why? Well, when people say I've lost myself, why have you lost yourself? You're not thinking about yourself. And we've been taught that that's selfish to think about yourself, but it's not, because we can pour from an empty cup, but we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be doing that, because that's not good for anybody.
no, it's not. And it teaches bad habits to our kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you stay in a bad marriage, you're not helping the kids.
Right. And they do
You're just,
say that leaving and having two healthy, well, at least two happy parents, is better for the kids. And my kids were grown when we got divorced, and they actually texted me separately and said, "We're proud of you," because they knew I was miserable. And and then now, now, we talk about it, and they're like, of course we knew. Of course we knew there were problems. Of course. And it makes me sad, but I've apologized. They've apologized. We've all done lots of apologies, and that's all you can do. So now thinking back, I didn't stay for the kids. I just thought I was always going to be there. But people who stay for the kids, your kids are suffering. They just can't even put the word, they don't even have a full brain, so they don't really know what's going on. They just know something's wrong. And then you're teaching them, even if it's subconsciously, right? That I need to find something like this. That's probably what I ended up doing. Somebody who,
But I did.
yeah, somebody who's treating me with kind of backhanded compliments and stuff like that and feeding me breadcrumbs. That feels very familiar. You know what I mean? So,
And then your kids repeat the patterns
yeah.
so they get older. And it doesn't even like I'm I'm friends with my ex-husband,
Mm,
but it's not like it's I'm not sad that we didn't stay married because
okay.
it was
Yeah.
like it wasn't working and he was doing
Right.
things that were
Right. That weren't
totally inappropriate.
right. They weren't
You know,
working for you.
they weren't working for me. And I recognize how I got in the situation. And
Yeah.
it's just like there's so many dynamics to it.
Yeah.
But I also know what my childhood was like that led to getting into that
Yes.
situation, which was I was totally trying to escape.
Yeah.
Um, and then like jumping from one frying pan into another one.
Right.
And then finally opened the cellar door and realized that there's so much more out there that doesn't
Yeah.
involve all of this not really good stuff. And
Right.
it doesn't make those people bad people. It's just
Hmm.
that I I was not a good fit for that situation. And I really didn't have any friends at that point. So it's like,
Right.
okay,
Well, you
starting
make
over.
room. Well, you make room. That was hard for me to learn. And then I had one of my coaches, she said, okay, there's room now for the good ones to come in. You have so many new good friends. I do have a lot of friends that stayed around. And that was a really thing to like a hard thing to unpack. It's like when I tell my story, certain people leave. And then I had one, and I was telling my friend that I was kind of crying about that. And she said, you told me your story and I didn't leave. And I said, oh, yeah, you're right. It's just hard because it really, when you leave abuse, even when you just get divorced, you're really starting to unravel so many things. Like, how did I get here? And again, like if it was abuse, we don't blame for that. But you go, how did I get here? You can't think, I naively thought, I'm getting rid of the problem. Everything's gonna be great.
And I don't think
Absolutely not.
people when they get divorced, a divorce is a big deal.
Yeah.
Breaking up with somebody that you've spent a lot of time with. I was
Yes.
married for like 13 years and lived with him
It's a
for
long time.
15.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And
It is.
then to and I started as basically a kid. I mean, I was
Yeah.
20 when I moved in, 19 when I moved in with him.
Yeah.
And I was 35 when I finally left. That's those are kind of pivotal
Yes.
years, but they're also to get to that point and be like, and I just cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
But you don't have any other safety net out there.
Yeah.
And people don't realize that, when a woman leaves a man, it really is stepping out without a
Mhm.
safety net. You're
Yeah.
suddenly going to be on your own. And it may be the first time they've ever been on their own
Yeah.
in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I moved into my new place, it was the first time I'd ever lived alone.
Mhm.
And I was 56, 55. First time I'd ever lived alone because I went from my parents' house to college and had roommates and then went to my boyfriend's house and went to my husband's house. It was like that. And it's like, it was great. And if you look at it like it's a terrible thing, then of course you're going to have a terrible time. But oh my gosh, I'm like, I can wake up and there's no one ruining my day by 8 a.m. And I can just, I loved going to get a cup of coffee and getting back in bed, watching a show for an hour and then getting on with my day or whatever. And he would just somehow tell me I was lazy or whatever other, thing he would say. And so I love doing it. And just those kinds of things. That's why I love journaling so much. It's like, write the little wins down. But you got to be paying attention to what is a little win. To me, it was getting in bed with a cup of coffee and not having anyone bother me about it. That kind of thing. Waking up and being able to journal at the dining table. because I didn't have that peace in my house before. So to look, I have peace now. I still do it. It's been a couple of years. I still do it. I'm like, oh, it's so peaceful. Like right now, it's so peaceful. Or I can have, I had music blasting in the living room and it was a good time. My neighbors weren't going to be affected, but it's like, I wouldn't have been able to do that before. And it's like those kinds of, you got to look at the little wins.
Yeah. And even if you're still in a relationship, like
Yeah.
I've been married for another 32 years, 30
Yeah.
years to a wonderful man, but he gives me
Yeah.
space. And,
Yes.
we have rituals and they include space for both of us.
That's
And
great.
we live in a small house, but we each have areas that are
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah.
And I don't try to decorate his side of the bed.
Right. Well, and we think that too, that we I don't know, in society sometimes you think, well, we got to spend every waking moment together and that, we really love each other. So, okay, but you're allowed to not always spend every moment with somebody, like be able to go out with your girlfriends or go take a class you want on your own or whatever, do an activity on your own. There were so many times where I wanted to just, I'm going to go for a walk and he'd be, I'll go with you. It's like, don't want you to, but it was hard when you're with somebody who's not trying to have a relationship with you and have conflict. That's different. But to be able to be in a healthy relationship and say, I just want to go for a walk on my own, doesn't mean that we're breaking up, doesn't mean that our marriage is over. I just want some alone time.
My husband first came home. He was an over-the-road truck driver for like
Mm,
28 years. And so he also is a big person who needs space.
yeah.
He goes in the garage, but he's had to come up with things that he likes to do. Like
Yeah.
he likes to go to the gym a few days a week. And he likes to go to the hot springs. And
Mm,
I like to go to the hot springs every once in a while, maybe once a
yeah.
month or so. He likes to go 3 or 4 times a week.
Wow.
And it's like, great, honey, get a membership. You
Go
go
ahead
and
and
do
go.
that.
Yeah.
Go. And he's making friends in the community,
Yeah, that's
something
great.
that he has never had. And at night, he likes to spend time on his computer in his chair in the living room. And we don't have a TV in the living room. We have one in our bedroom. So I like to go upstairs in our bedroom and for a couple of hours, it's just me and the dogs.
I love that.
And at 7:30, he brings me tea and goes back downstairs and leaves me
Oh
alone to
my
enjoy
gosh,
it.
that's so nice.
It is,
It's nice to have your own thing so that when you come back together, you like each other.
we walk together almost every morning, unless it's like really treacherous outside. But
Yeah.
that we have things that we do together. We have meals together and we walk together. And
Mhm.
in the summertime, we like to go on hikes one day on the weekend. And we have a standing date with one of our grandsons
Mm.
on Thursdays,
Oh,
and we do that together.
that's
But
fun.
it's like we can do things together, but we have things throughout the day that we do
Yeah.
separately. And it's not because we don't like each other. It's just
Right.
because, we're individual human beings and we're living our own
What?
lives.
It's true. And the thing is we have been taught wrong in many ways in society. It's like we're aspiring to something that sometimes can't even be held up, and so we do have to be our whole self and really love ourselves to be able to be that, if we want to be with somebody and just come together, two whole lives coming together. And I really did not know that that was that was a thing until recently. I've been learning who I am because I thought, oh, I haven't known who I am for 32 years. No, I didn't know who I was for 55 years. I didn't know who Laura was. So we're doing inner child work and talking to little Laura and really trying to understand, how did I need to be loved? What did I want? And that's good. It's good to do that and work through that. And because then I'm so happy at the kind of person I am and how I can move through this world. And that's what I always wanted. I wanted to feel okay in my skin.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that most of us are looking for
Yeah.
is just being okay with who we are because
Yeah.
we've spent so many years of our lives believing that we weren't enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad.
It is really sad. I have really enjoyed chatting with you, Laura.
Me too. It was
What's-
fun.
What's the one thing you hope the audience takes away from our conversation today?
Well, I always like to tell people that their voice matters. And so your story, your life, your hopes, your dreams, they matter. And I just, I want people to remember that. And yeah, don't forget about yourself because that's what's really important. So be thinking about you and your hopes and your dreams and how you want to walk through this world because that's really important.
And people can get in touch with you or listen to your podcast. How?
My podcast is called That's Where I'm At. And they can go to that'swherei'matpodcast.com and they can find everything there. And I actually have a journal download under freebie so that people can get started on their journaling journey today.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.